All right, so rapper GloRilla was the victim of a very serious crime, a home invasion burglary to be exact. And it's reported that some high value items of jewelry were stolen. So, what's the update on the case? Did they catch the burglars? Not to my knowledge. Was her jewelry recovered? Not to my knowledge. But GloRilla ended up getting arrested. How does this even happen, right? I mean, this is worse than Craig getting fired on his day off for stealing boxes, right? Let's talk about it. I want to welcome you back. If you've watched some of my videos before, if you haven't, my name is Jamahl Kersey. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing law for over 15 years, and on this channel, we're breaking down legal concepts so you're in the know. All right, so sometimes criminal cases are just a result of bad luck or being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And sometimes it's just stuff that you have to laugh about. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a detention facility, sat down with a client, and we just kind of end up laughing about the situation. Obviously, what's going on with them is no laughing matter, and I don't make light of that situation, but you have your points where where you can share a laugh with your client, and it actually makes for good bonding with your client. But anyhow, GloRilla is living out her dreams, right? As an artist, really you just want to be able to do two things. You want to be able to create great work, create great art, and share it with the world. If you are amongst the privileged few who get paid to share your art with the world, then you are living the dream. If you're in a position where you become famous and are able to get rich off of that art, then you are in the 0.000 something percent of artists who manage to make it into that stratosphere. And that's exactly where young GloRilla finds herself. And she was performing at the WNBA All Star Game, right? So she's performing and again, checking off all the bucket list items of what you would want to do at a young, as a young artist, right? As a young budding star. Meanwhile, one of the most scary things is happening at her residence. I don't know if this happened in the daytime or at night, but there was a home invasion burglary going on at her home where she obviously wasn't home, but other people, friends or family, were at her house. And the idea of having your home, right? A man's home is his castle, a woman's home is her castle for that matter. Home is where the heart is. Home is your safe place. Home is where you are shielded from the outside world. And for somebody to breach that security because they want some of what you have is just one of the scariest things that a person can go through. Now, I've never personally been the victim of a home invasion burglary. However, I've defended quite a few of them, and I've sat through victim impact statements when people are describing the fear, their lack of feeling comfortable and safe in their home, in their own home. Sometimes people decide that they need to move. That's, if they have the resources to just pick up and move. It just can be a very traumatic experience. And whoever was at her house, they reported that they were traumatized by the whole event. And, theft is just one of those things that just really sucks, man. I can remember I had a 1987 BMW 325i. It was a sedan. It was blue. The homies will remember that car because we just used to ride around all day just getting into dumb stuff. I had that car and I had an Alpine head unit. And just back in the days, BMW plus the Alpine stereo system was just the thing to do, right? I was going to see a lady and I remember coming out of the house, getting back to the car, ready to go home. And I look and something looks off. Like a window wasn't broken. There wasn't any sort of break-in into the car. But when I get in, I look into that center unit and it's all bashed out. And even back then in '87, they had this little computer module that was surrounding where the radio was. And my radio was gone. It was all bashed in. And that just really hurt me on a level, just because, again, it sucks to have things stolen from you, but music is my heart. Music is my love, my passion. I grew up playing music my whole life. A fun game or question is, would you rather go deaf or rather go blind? I don't want to put that out in the atmosphere. I'm knocking on wood, but if I had to pick, I definitely have to go blind. I go blind 7 days of the week, twice on Sunday, just because I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't hear anymore. But when that head unit was taken away from me, not only did they take the thing that I'm passionate about in terms of music, and on top of that, my boy Danny, he had a Silk the Shocker CD that he lent me, and that that's what I was listening to. And so, to this day, when I talk to my boy Danny, he gives me stuff about losing his Silk the Shocker CD. But to be able to lose that element of my life, and also just the reminder, because I didn't have the money to fix the, they just really, it looked like they took a hammer and just bashed in that computer. I didn't have the money to fix that. So every time I got in the car, it was just another reminder of these people that violated my property. And it's one of those things where you just know, man, this thing is going to get sold for pennies on the dollar, probably by some sort of crackhead or whatever. And it sucks. And that's a car, right? That's a car and a car stereo, let alone your home. So I can just imagine and, how scary that would have been. Apparently, one of the occupants of the home actually had a firearm and ended up firing shots at the intruders. And they would have been legally justified in doing so. Thankfully, nobody ended up getting hurt. Obviously, if nobody got hurt, no one got killed. But that's a dangerous thing. And if you're running up in people's homes, then you need to understand you should probably stop that and look into something more legitimate. Just understand that every time you go up into someone's home, you might run up on that person that has a shotgun and is ready to defend their property and their loved ones and themselves. And you could die in the act of trying to get some money or trying to get some jewelry. So anyhow, law enforcement ends up getting called naturally after this burglary takes place. They come in, they're going to do their investigation. Obviously, they need to go into the house. They're going to take pictures. There may have been things that were ransacked. They're going to be trying to lift fingerprints. They're going to be going around to different homes to see if there were any security cameras that are going to have gotten footage of the incident. They're just, doing their investigation. At some point, they end up in the master closet and they see some marijuana in plain view. Now, it's not entirely clear how this played out, but it's been reported that they then went to get a search warrant based on the weed that they found, right? And they found the weed because one of the officers smelled an odor consistent with illegal narcotics. And so that then leads to them going in the master bedroom, which, the reports would indicate better, but this may be that they went in response to the smell, or they were just going through because, if you have a master bedroom and assuming that GloRilla's her master bedroom closet is going to be very large, right? Then that might be where some of the jewelry might have been hidden or valuable items, whether shoes or clothes or what have you. So they're just going through each of the rooms to do their investigation and end up finding this marijuana in plain view. Now, they end up going to get a search warrant. And again, what's reported, it's not entirely clear whether they ended up executing that search warrant, but it does show that at some point they shifted their attention from this burglary investigation to now we're looking at a possible controlled substance or narcotics violation, to where they're no longer looking at GloRilla as a victim, but rather they're looking at her as a suspect, right? And so she does actually end up getting charged with possession of a controlled substance or possession of marijuana. And I had to look up because, every state is different. And while we have a lot of progressive states, right, you can now go into dispensaries and purchase marijuana, you can consume. I still trip out on people just, smoking in the streets just because it's, I definitely lived in the era where it was illegal. And so now for it to be legal and everybody could just smoke everywhere just still kind of trips me out. But every state is not like that. And in Georgia, where this took place, consumption of marijuana for recreational use is still illegal. Now, you can have medical marijuana, you can have, there's a limit on how much you can personally possess, but, you can't just have marijuana for recreational use. And I don't know, it's possible that GloRilla actually has some sort of medical marijuana card or a permit that allows her to smoke. But either way, that would get sorted out at a later date. She is being charged with this violation. And, the law enforcement agency obviously had to speak on this because there's a bit of an outrage, at least from her. I don't know what the public perception is. You let me know. Do you think that this is completely unfair that she finds herself in this situation? Do you think it's unjust? Do you think they should have exercised their discretion and not pursued this against her? Let me know your thoughts. But they did actually come out and make a statement and say, hey, yes, we confirm this woman was the victim of a crime, a very serious crime at that, but we just can't turn a blind eye to when we see evidence of potential criminal activity. And so they ended up acting on it. And law enforcement, they do have discretion, right? They have a lot of discretion as to whether they're going to make an arrest or not make an arrest, whether they're going to turn a file over to the prosecutor's office or not turn a file over to the prosecutor's office. And what I mean by that is when they're investigating alleged criminal activity, let's just say they believe they have probable cause for an arrest. And we can, domestic violence is something that a lot of people can relate to, or, it's good for illustration purposes. But let's just say man gets into it with his wife. He ends up slapping her. Neighbors hear the commotion. They call 911. They respond to the apartment. Wife says, she gives a statement, says, yeah, my husband slapped me, but it's all good. We're good. We don't need, I don't want him to be arrested. I don't desire prosecution, any of that. They take a picture of her face. They see a clear handprint. The guy ends up getting arrested, right? At that point, if he gets arrested, there's going to have been probable cause for the arrest. That doesn't necessarily mean that the police are going to turn their file over to the prosecutor's office. If they don't turn their file over to the prosecutor's office, then there's nothing for the prosecutor to review, and there's no chance of charges being filed against that person. And so that's what I mean, where there are some elements of discretion that law enforcement has in this situation. And it appears that, they made the decision that they were going to go after her. And, a lot of the analysis is going to depend on how much weed did they actually find. If they did actually execute that search warrant, what did they find after that? But still, it just seems unfair, right? She invited you in her home as part of this investigation, or, one of her family members or friends let you in as part of this investigation. And rather than to be fully focused on that, you then, find some weed and then want to prosecute her for that. I think that just sucks. But especially because you would want law enforcement to be going full force on either finding your property or finding the people who did this, or the combination of both, so that you can be made whole. But it ends up being a slap in the face. It ends up being insult to injury, pouring salt on the wound, all the analogies and sayings in this situation where it's such bad luck. Can I necessarily say that this is some horrendous civil rights violation and we need to start banging that drum? No, but it just is something where I would think that law enforcement could have exercised their discretion and not move forward with this. Well, if I'm her attorney, I'm definitely getting on the horn with the district attorney and seeing how we can get this resolved short of her being convicted of anything. I think they definitely can exercise their discretion and say, okay, if there's some sort of agreement, she's going to get rid of all of her weed, not going to have weed again, let it be a slap on the wrist, let it be a warning, and let you guys focus on the real bad guys in this situation. And then at that point, she has a serious decision to make, right? If you want to continue to consume marijuana, then maybe you move to a state that's more weed friendly. So you're not, you're not just finding yourself in these types of problems. You have the resources to do so. People should be able to live where they want to live, but every state is different. Every state has different laws, and you have to abide by them. Otherwise, you could find yourself on the wrong side of the law and facing criminal charges, having to go through the stress of all this, and even potentially facing custody for something, relatively minor. Well, that's all I'm gonna say on this one. If you got something out of this video, show me some love, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. And as always, I wanna thank you so much for watching. Until next time, peace.